It was an ordinary morning, or at least it should have been. I woke up to the smell of coffee brewing, the usual hum of the house waking up. But there was something in the air, a tension that I couldn't shake off. As I glanced at my husband, Aaron, sitting at the kitchen table, I noticed how distant he seemed. His usual cheerful smile was gone. He wasn't making small talk like he usually did, and his eyes, those warm, reassuring eyes, looked colder, almost hollow. I could feel the knot in my stomach tightening. Something was off, and I couldn't figure out what. The rest of the day went by slowly. Aaron left for work earlier than usual, barely acknowledging me as he kissed my forehead. His mind seemed to be somewhere else entirely. I tried to brush it off, convincing myself it was just stress from his busy work schedule. But deep down, I couldn't ignore the feeling that something had changed. It was like there was a distance growing between us, a gap that I couldn't bridge. The more I thought about it, the worse it became. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, but my instincts told me otherwise. That night, when Aaron came home, I was expecting things to go back to normal. But when he walked through the door, I felt it again. The coldness. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes tired, and there was a strange sense of unease in the way he moved. "Long day?" I asked, trying to sound casual, but he just nodded, offering a weak smile that didn't reach his eyes. Something wasn't right. I wanted to ask him what was going on, to demand answers, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I was afraid of what I might hear. The silence between us grew heavier with every passing day. Aaron came home late most nights, and when he did, it felt like he was just going through the motions. He barely looked at me, let alone engage in any kind of conversation. It was as if he was a stranger living in my house. I began to wonder if I had done something wrong, if I had missed something. Was I imagining things? Or was he pulling away from me? I didn't know, but I felt like I was losing him, and it terrified me. One night, when Aaron was fast asleep, I couldn't take it anymore. The questions in my mind kept swirling, and I knew I had to find some answers. I quietly got out of bed and began searching through his things. My heart pounded in my chest as I rifled through his belongings, feeling guilty but desperate for the truth. When I picked up his phone, it was unlocked. I hesitated, but curiosity got the best of me. I began reading through his messages. My breath caught in my throat when I saw the messages between him and another woman, flirtatious, intimate messages. My stomach dropped. The shock hit me like a wave. Aaron was having an affair. I couldn't breathe. The world around me seemed to spin. This wasn't happening. My mind raced, trying to process what I had just read, but nothing made sense. I thought I knew Aaron. I thought we had built a life together. How could he betray me like this? I sat there, frozen, tears threatening to spill. But I couldn't cry. Not yet. I needed to confront him, but I wasn't sure if I was ready to face the truth. What if he denied it? What if I was wrong? The next morning, everything felt different. I couldn't look at Aaron without feeling a wave of disgust and confusion. He didn't seem to notice, or maybe he was pretending not to. When he asked me what was wrong, I couldn't bring myself to answer him. How could I explain what I had discovered? How could I tell him that I knew about his betrayal when I could barely admit it to myself? I avoided him as much as I could, spending the day lost in my thoughts, trying to make sense of everything. As the days passed, the distance between us grew. Aaron continued to act like nothing was wrong, but I couldn't pretend anymore. I knew what I had seen, and it was eating away at me. I couldn't look at him without seeing the lies, the deceit. One evening when he came home late again, I couldn't take it anymore. I finally confronted him. "I know about the messages," I said, my voice shaking. He froze, his face going pale. His eyes flickered with guilt, and in that moment, I knew the truth. It was all real. My world shattered. He apologized. Over and over, he apologized. But the words didn't mean anything to me anymore. How could I forgive him? How could I trust him again after everything I had seen? The betrayal ran too deep. The man I had loved, the man I had built my life with, was gone. In his place was a stranger. Someone who had lied to me. Someone who had broken my heart. I wanted to yell at him, to tell him how much he had hurt me, but all I could do was sit there in silence, listening to his apologies that felt hollow. For days, I couldn't escape the pain. The memories of our good times together only made the hurt worse. I couldn't understand how everything had gone so wrong. I wanted to forget, to move on, but I didn't know how. I stayed in the house, avoiding Aaron as much as possible. I didn't want to talk to him, didn't want to hear his voice. I couldn't look at him without feeling the weight of his betrayal hanging over me. And every time he tried to reach out, I pushed him away. I needed space, but the silence between us was deafening. One evening when he came home and sat next to me, I could feel the weight of his guilt hanging in the air. "I want to fix this," he said, his voice pleading. "I love you, and I made a huge mistake. Please, let me make it right." But I couldn't hear him anymore. His words were just more lies, more attempts to make me believe that things could go back to the way they were. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him how much he had hurt me, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything. The truth was, I didn't know what to say. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't stop my mind from racing. Was this really the end? Could I ever forgive him? Could we move past this? I thought about our life together, the dreams we had shared, the future we had planned. And then I thought about the woman, the affair. How could he have done this? The pain was unbearable, and I knew deep down that I couldn't continue living this way. I needed to make a decision, and I knew it had to be now. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay when it clearly wasn't. The decision wasn't easy, but I knew I had to leave. I packed my things that night, quietly, without a word. I didn't want to face him again, didn't want to hear more apologies that didn't mean anything. The next morning, when he woke up, I was gone. I left a note, but I didn't want to explain myself any further. There was nothing left to say. I needed to find myself again, to heal, and that meant walking away from him. The tears came later, as I sat alone in a small apartment. The emptiness in my heart was suffocating. The days that followed were hard, but in a strange way, they were also freeing. I spent time reflecting on who I was, what I wanted. The anger began to fade, replaced by a deep sadness. But even in my sadness, I found strength. I didn't need Aaron to complete me. I could be whole on my own. The healing process wasn't quick, but each day I felt a little lighter. I began to rebuild my life, piece by piece. The betrayal still haunted me, but I knew I had to let go, to move forward. And for the first time in a long time, I started to feel like myself again. Weeks passed, and I started to adjust to my new life. I found comfort in my routine, in the small joys of everyday life. The pain of what Aaron had done was still there, but it didn't control me anymore. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just sad. Sad that things had turned out this way. Sad that I had trusted someone who didn't deserve it. But I was stronger now, and I was determined to never let anyone take away my peace again. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was starting to live again. Months later, Aaron tried to reach out. He sent messages, called, and even showed up at my new place. But I was done. I had moved on. The person I had been before, the one who had loved him so deeply, was gone. And in her place was someone who had learned the value of self-worth. I didn't need Aaron anymore. I had built my own life, and I was finally at peace with it. The hurt was still there, but it no longer defined me. I had let go, and I was free.